Dude, I want to discuss a very important topic that all pickup truck or SUV consumers, I think, care about. It's reliability.
Yeah, and it's a big topic for today because there is an investigation open on the L87 GM 6.2 liter V8, and it affects a lot of trucks.
Yeah, it affects 877,000 GM trucks and SUVs. This includes the Tahoe, the Suburban, the GMC Yukon, the Escalade, of course, Sierra and Silverado 1500 trucks. But it's not a recall yet. It's an investigation. But we've been getting a lot of questions about this because a lot of people, care. Almost 1 million people.
Absolutely, it affects a lot of trucks, and typically GM's V8s are engines that we see and think of as being very dependable, and the failure that they're being investigated for is not a minor thing.
Yes, but specifically it affects the 6.2. And this is really the engine that is available in a lot of luxurious versions of these trucks, right? So I actually saw some reports. So this one particular report, by the way, 39 reports of engine failures have been submitted so far.
Yep.
And one of the reports was, I think, a gentleman driving up a mountain grade in his Escalade, and his engine just froze. He lost power. He had to pull over on the side of the highway. So this could be a issue that's fairly scary.
Yeah, and potentially hazardous. If your
Yeah.
motor seizes up as you're driving down the highway, especially if you're pulling a trailer,
Yeah.
that could all be pretty bad.
Yes, but I also want to take a positive look on this.
Really?
So yes, a positive look.
Interesting.
Because we've been talking to a lot of engineers over the years. I've been doing this for 12 years. You've been doing it for many years as well.
For sure.
I looked at two numbers. First of all, 877,000. That's a big number.
It is.
Also, the year range is 2019 through 2024. So this is basically over 5 years or maybe more, right? And 39 complaints. I did some math. This is 0.0004% complaints versus engines. So if you ask an engineer about mechanical failures, that would be a pretty successful percentage.
I can see where you're coming from there. I mean, the issue that we're talking about here is a pretty huge problem. So, like you can see in our article here, vehicles could suffer catastrophic damage from a connecting rod bearing failure. A rod bearing failure is a pretty fundamental failure. That is going to require a bottom end rebuild, which is not
or engine replacement, right?
Deal, exactly. So it's a definitely scary issue to be facing. I can see where you're coming from in saying that 39 engines out of almost 900,000 is not bad, but those 39 people had the same type of failure, which makes me think that maybe in a part of the manufacturing process there was some issue, maybe in the design of the engine there was some issue. But at the same time, with that percentage of likelihood that your 6.2 is going to have this issue, which you said was how many zeros?
A fraction of a fraction of a percent, right? So so far, but it could be more. Maybe some people are not talking, right? Potentially, 39 people spoke up this way, with the government agency, but maybe some other people are not talking about this. So this is obviously a really interesting topic because, we've seen basically every manufacturer has a recall. Every manufacturer can have serious issue with their engines.
For sure.
One thing about these engines, they haven't changed since really 2019.
Yeah.
Of course, the 6.2 was there before. Before a slightly different generation was called L86
instead of L. Those 6.2s were from 2014 to 2019.
Yeah.
And it doesn't seem like the L86 motors have any issues that are being reported as far as these rod bearing failures. So it'll be interesting to see how this develops, what they potentially find out could be the cause behind it, whether it was a manufacturing thing, whether it was a design thing, materials, quality of materials. Who knows what they're going to find out as far as what caused it. And it'll be interesting, too, to see if the numbers that are being reported so far change at all as it gets investigated further. But like we said earlier, this is not a full-scale recall yet.
Right, and I think that's why, well, NHTSA, the government agency, of course, is also looking into this. They're the regulators, right? Because if they determine, and I think they're working with the manufacturer, it's a two-way street, right? They ask the manufacturer questions, the manufacturer responds, because I'm pretty sure that everybody involved doesn't want failures.
No,
right?
absolutely
Of course,
not.
the GM doesn't want them, the engineers don't want them, the government agency doesn't want them, we don't want it. So let's explain the failure a little bit more. So it's at the bottom end of the engine, basically. Yep. So the piston goes up and down.
Oh, look
right?
at that. But you don't have a connecting rod there.
No, the connecting rod is here, right? Yeah. It attaches to the crankshaft, right?
Yep.
And there's a bearing kind of at the bottom of it, right?
Yeah, on the connecting rod.
Yeah, on the connecting rod. So if you have any debris, right, any metal shavings, maybe bad metal, right, yep. Different materials, maybe, if that wears out and basically, fails, the piston can no longer move up and down.
Yeah, where the connecting rod connects to the crankshaft is not a place that you want to have a failure.
It's a critical part of the engine.
It's pretty important.
It's a critical part, yes.
Yeah, it's definitely a concerning issue, and it also rings very similar to another recall that happened not that long ago.
Yes. Are you referring to Toyota?
I am.
Yes. So I was actually here on an NHTSA. By the way, if you ever want to know about recalls, you can always go to nhtsa.gov, G-O-V, and you could look up your VIN or your license plate even. You could put in a vehicle generically, like I did 2022 Tundra, or you could put your VIN right here, and it will tell you, if your vehicle is part of any recalls. You can ask your dealership about it. So it's very, very simple to kind of find out if you're affected or if you're not affected by a recall and what the complaints are.
Once again, this issue so far is not a recall.
It's not a recall.
It's not going to show up on the NHTSA website if you plug in your VIN. We'll see if it turns into a recall at all.
Yeah, but with the recent Tundras, some complaints turned into a recall, right? So they went through a very similar process. You can kind of see here, for example, there were 10 recalls on the 2022. This is a new twin turbocharged Tundra. This is the new generation of the truck. You can kind of click over here.
If you go back to all.
Debris in engine may cause stall. So this is kind of what we're talking about. And this affected over 100,000 Tundras.
Yeah. So it's a smaller number than what we're potentially looking at with the GM trucks, although I'd be surprised if a recall comes out affecting all 900,000 trucks.
Probably unlikely.
Not to say it's impossible, but I'd be kind of surprised. But 100,000 trucks, still a pretty big recall, but GM manufactures a lot of trucks.
Yeah, a lot more than Toyota manufactures Tundras.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, and also Sequoias, which is the SUV version of this. But what happened was similar, right? There were some complaints. There was studies done. Toyota worked with the agencies, right? They all looked into it, and they determined that debris during the manufacturing process inside the engines was the cause of this.
Yeah, and you can see here where they listed out, like you were saying, debris from the manufacturing process, but this was actually a failure of the main bearings instead of the rod bearings.
Which is also a critical part.
Still a huge deal,
Yeah.
still
Yeah.
means you're looking at a bottom end rebuild or, like you said, an entire just engine replacement drop in.
Exactly, and Toyota is going to be replacing engines, they decided, right? Instead of rebuilding engines or replacing certain components of engines, because every time you open up an engine, you're introducing potential, opportunities for errors, right?
Yeah,
you can make a mistake, you can do something else. So, so it'll be very interesting what happens to these GM vehicles.
Exactly. So we'll have to stay tuned. Obviously, we'll report on this kind of news anytime it happens because it affects a lot of people. People want information they need to know because there's a lot of you guys out there driving trucks with these motors.
But I'm going to be positive. Yeah. I'm going to remain positive because we're talking about a year span of 5 years. We're talking about a lot of vehicles, and it seems like it potentially could be just like, I don't know. I'm not saying if your engine fails, it's inconsequential because it's a huge deal for that person.
It is. Absolutely.
But it could be just a mechanical issue that's within the error percentage.
Yeah, the margins of typical
Margins of error.
failures. Yeah, if you build 1 million vehicles, like
some
you
of them might
say,
fail.
Yeah, so we'll see how it progresses.
Yeah. So let us know what you think about this. Obviously, and that's another reason why manufacturers don't change their engine designs. I mean, they've maintained this design and power output for so many years on purpose.
The engine's been around for a long
Yeah.
time, and we've enjoyed it in several different vehicles that we've tested. And we haven't, that I know of, we haven't owned an L87, but we've tested plenty of them.
We've owned a 5.3. Actually, no. We did.
That's right. We had the.
We did. We had a Silverado 1500 ZR2.
Yeah, so
this was
corrected.
This was before it was available with a diesel.
Right.
And now it is. But before, we bought one of the first ones with a 6.2.
I forgot about that truck because we didn't have that truck for a super long
No,
time.
no. Yeah, just a few months, maybe almost half a year.
Yeah.
But this truck worked flawlessly.
Yeah, it did. In the time that we had it, we didn't have any issues. So.
Alrighty, well, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time, and we'll have a lot more for you at oldtfl.com.